Ba-bum, music. We don't have that yet, but every podcast seems to start with it. So there's the music. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Welcome to the first episode of the Meta Hour podcast, a weekly show covering what's new and notable in the metaverse, crypto, entertainment, and most importantly, all while enjoying a Meta Hour cocktail. As it's always 5 p.m. in the metaverse, I'm not too concerned that I'm recording this at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'm a little concerned with how the rest of my day is going to end up, but it'll be okay. This week we are already off to a busy start for crypto and metaverse-centric companies. There's so much going on, it's almost hard to keep track of it every day. When crypto was becoming popular a couple of years ago, it was just about the money that could be made off the markets, but now it's about the technology that's driving everything and the companies that are launching and the investments and how that's going to tie into broad mainstream branding and traditional finance and the metaverse. It was interesting today. We saw Mark Zuckerberg in Meta Reality Labs trying out haptic gloves, interacting with objects in virtual space. Pretty interesting. I think one of the big issues with VR is you just kind of have these mitts that you push around in the world. You can't really grab onto anything with any real feedback, and the haptic glove is actually going to make it so you can feel those pressure points on your fingers. It shows him trying to pick up a Jenga piece, which he drops. It seems like it may be a little optimistic to start, but still pretty interesting. Crypto is blowing up as usual. Starkware got a $50 million investment from Sequoia Capital and a $2 billion valuation. Starkware is a ZK rollup. ZK rollups alleviate a lot of processing power and fees that are taken up on the layer 1 of Ethereum. This allows others to get in there and make contracts and swap tokens and make transactions off the layer 1 Ethereum on layer 2, where fees are significantly lower, but all the security is being pushed back up to the layer 1. Polygon, which is a $10 billion market cap Ethereum sidechain, announced that they were rolling out a ZK rollup today too, called Maiden. We're going to see a lot of this happening. Everyone's going to want to try to get layer 2 roll up as the place to be, get people loaded onto it using their network because they generate fees, make a lot of money off of that. So we're going to see a big race to cover the ZK rollup space. And over in the metaverse, most really aren't sure quite now how to capitalize off of what that is exactly. It is a term that's, as we know, just kind of come around to the masses, unfortunately mostly with Facebook's name change, but they did change their name. They are going to drive a lot of recognition, which is good for development and expansion. Finance world, again, 10 steps behind, aren't quite sure where to focus their money from an individual investor perspective. Jim Cramer of Mad Money's recommends looking at Unity, which is a platform that builds the software that is going to be used in the metaverse, from video game engines to virtual worlds, and also recommends NVIDIA as a semiconductor of choice. We've seen NVIDIA benefit greatly over the years from crypto mining boom, so it makes sense it would continue as the metaverse takes hold. One has to wonder if people are going to start hosting their own metaverses that are connected via a central network, much like crypto mining was. And if you're going to need that kind of processing power at home, and who knows if you're even to be any payoff, and no one's going to set up a huge computer network if they're not going to make any money. But we might see decentralized metaverses standing up to anything that Facebook can roll out, as long as the software packages can become mainstream enough that a individual could host them on their computer with some kind of network kickback. I could see a blockchain application being put together to allow for the expansion of a decentralized metaverse as opposed to Facebook's idea of metaverse. But that's still, 5 years away, I would imagine. Today's cocktail is a standard go-to, the Metahattan, a Manhattan for the metaverse. The Metahattan is not a hard drink to make, and I think a lot of people are not as familiar with it as much as they are an old-fashioned, or perhaps they confuse with a cosmopolitan. but it's an amazing blend of rye or bourbon if that's your thing, sweet vermouth, bitters, and a subtle sweetness of a branded cherry. What's really important in the Metahattan, and really any cocktail, including the Manhattan, is the choice of the liquor. In this case, the rye and the vermouth are paramount. Some good rye choices are Rittenhouse 100, Redemption Rye, Willet Rye. I had been using Bullet Rye for a while, but I recently moved away from it, favoring other choices. But really, whatever you prefer, and it's kind of fun to try different ones. They yield a very different drink, surprisingly. For the vermouth, you really only have one choice, which is Carpano. It's more expensive, but it's the best. If you don't have Carpano, make sure you choose a sweet vermouth. Don't try to use Martini extra dry vermouth. That would turn into a very interesting cocktail indeed. The recipe is simple. It's 2 ounces of your choice of rye, about 3/4 to an ounce of Carpano, 2 dashes of Angostura Bitters. You pour all that into your stainless stirring cup, add ice, and stir until the temp is below freezing. This is one thing I never really grasped when making cocktails, was how important the stirring process was. I thought it was just about getting the drink cold, not really realizing that the process of stirring is actually diluting the water into the drink, which increases the flavor by releasing a lot of those kind of flavors that are caught inside the alcohols. And makes it a little bit easier drinking. And so you want to stir until that cocktail liquid is below freezing point. You'll know then you've kind of got things equalized and you've got the right amount of water mixed in. And then strain that out into a glass. I prefer the Coupe glasses. I like their shape. You can also use a Martini glass. I just find the Coupes a little easier to drink. And I tend to drink Manhattans quicker than I do Martinis. And Martinis I prefer to sip in the angular glasses. Add a cherry, preferably a Luxardo cherry, or a Trader Joe's version of that if you want to go a little cheaper. Those are still pretty good. Just don't add those bright red maraschinos that you put on strawberry sundaes in the grocery store. And there you go. That's the Metahattan. And that was Meta Hour in about 5 minutes. That is quick. We have a lot more to say. We're just getting started. I don't know who the we is. It's just me for now. But check back next week for an expanded episode and more on the metaverse and cocktails during Meta Hour. Closing music.